Did you ever think one decision by a small European nation could rattle the entire global semiconductor industry? You weren't supposed to see this coming. Nobody was. Not Washington, not Brussels, and not even Amsterdam itself. But here we are. The Netherlands, one of America's closest allies, has made a choice that could shake the entire tech world, and it is standing firm. It took only one move to disrupt America's carefully orchestrated tech strategy against China. Now, the fallout has left everyone scrambling. The Netherlands, under immense US pressure, has taken a stand that may reshape global supply chains. ASML, the Dutch tech titan that dominates about 90% of the world's lithography equipment market, was expected to fall in line with Washington's plan to cut off China's access to advanced semiconductor technology. Instead, reports emerged that ASML continues to supply China with deep ultraviolet dove lithography machines, crucial for chip production. This decision has undercut US attempts to limit China's technological rise and left analysts wondering, is the Netherlands blazing its own trail or playing a dangerous game of economic brinkmanship? Peter Wenning, ASML's former CEO, warned long ago that shutting China out entirely might backfire. He believed that isolating China would only push it to accelerate domestic innovation. So far, this prediction is proving accurate. Despite sanctions, China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SEMIC, has succeeded in producing a 7nm chip, a milestone that US restrictions were meant to prevent. The Wall Street Journal called this a wake-up call for Western tech dominance. ASML's machines, especially its extreme ultraviolet EUV systems, are the crown jewels of the semiconductor war. Each EUV machine costs more than 380 million $, is essential for making the world's most advanced microchips. Without EUV access, China remains technologically behind the US, Taiwan, and South Korea. To enforce this gap, the Biden administration pressured the Dutch government to ban EUV sales to China completely. However, complications arise because ASML doesn't just produce EUV machines. It also holds a commanding lead in manufacturing DUV lithography systems, which, while older, are still critical for producing mainstream chips. The US wants these sales blocked too, but the Netherlands is hesitant. The numbers are hard to ignore. In 2023, China accounted for nearly half of ASML's revenue, over $7 billion. Severing that market could cause financial pain, possibly opening the door for Chinese competitors to catch up faster. Some see the Netherlands' position as defiance. Others see it as economic pragmatism. The Dutch government heavily supports ASML as a national treasure. Allowing Washington to dictate its trade policy could reduce the Netherlands to an economic pawn in the broader US-China rivalry. Meanwhile, China has signaled it won't stand idly by. Reports suggest Beijing is stockpiling ASML equipment and rapidly expanding its domestic lithography technology. A whopping $143 billion has been pledged by China to boost its semiconductor sector. Dutch policymakers now face a dilemma. If they bend to American pressure today, will they even have a market in China tomorrow? Washington's entire approach rests on the belief that without ASML, China cannot build cutting-edge chips. Yet this assumption looks shakier by the day. Recent industry data shows China's advanced chip output jumped by 70% in 2023 compared to the previous year, despite sanctions. Instead of halting progress, restrictions have spurred massive domestic investment. American chip giants like Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm are watching closely as the situation unfolds, aware that tightening controls may only strengthen China's resolve. Bloomberg reports that while the US bans direct chip sales to companies like Huawei, workarounds flourish through subsidiaries and third-party channels. So if ASML keeps shipping Dove machines, does this policy really slow China down or speed up its self-sufficiency? Each US move to tighten the noose around China's tech ambitions has provoked bigger Chinese investments in local production. Huawei's Mate 60 Pro smartphone, equipped with a sophisticated 7nm processor, stunned observers precisely because it shouldn't exist under current restrictions. Now China is planning to push further. A new $45 billion injection into SMEC and Yangtze memory technologies aims to advance domestic chip production. Dutch experts point out that as long as ASML keeps supplying China with crucial machines, Chinese firms will keep learning and improving. This means that while ASML enjoys short-term profit, it may be sowing the seeds of its own replacement. The impact extends far beyond the Netherlands. The European Union already struggles to present a united trade front. France and Germany back Washington publicly on restricting chip tech to China, but privately, many EU leaders grumble that the US doesn't always follow its own rules. American companies still find loopholes to keep doing business in China. So why should Europe sacrifice its economic interests unilaterally? European chip makers like ST Microelectronics and Infineon have reportedly lobbied against sweeping bans, fearing they'd lose market share to Asian rivals. If the Netherlands' resistance inspires others, could Europe as a whole push back against US trade dictates? This question strikes at the heart of Western unity. China already controls a commanding 77% share of global battery production. Its Achilles heel is still high-performance semiconductors, exactly where ASML's unique EUV machines come into play. While Washington has blocked EUV sales, China is ramping up its capacity to make do with DUV tools. Its EV industry, powered by batteries and semiconductors, is growing explosively. Domestic EV sales could top 10 million units this year alone, threatening the market dominance of Tesla, Volkswagen, and General Motors. If China manages to close the semiconductor gap too, it won't just lead in batteries, it could dominate the entire EV supply chain, forcing Western automakers to rely on Chinese tech for years to come. The stakes couldn't be higher. Washington's CHIPS Act expansion aims to counter this trend with $39 billion in subsidies. The EU is working on its own European CHIPS Act worth $47 billion. Yet these efforts may be too little, too late if the technological race shifts in China's favor. Some fear that if ASML doesn't stop selling to China, the US could impose secondary sanctions on European firms, just as it did with companies supplying Huawei. Meanwhile, China's state-backed semiconductor initiative, nicknamed the Big Fund 2, has earmarked tens of billions more to develop domestic lithography tools. Early prototypes are expected by 2026. Should these succeed, Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung, both reliant on ASML, could lose their technological lead. This uncertainty is pushing European semiconductor companies to question their dependence on US policy decisions. Many now urge EU policymakers to preserve trade flexibility instead of following Washington's lead blindly. This tug-of-war reveals a bigger truth. The semiconductor standoff is about more than chips. It is about a potential fracture of the global technology ecosystem. If the current trend continues, the world could split into two rival supply chains. One, led by the US and its allies, and another dominated by China. For decades, Europe positioned itself as a neutral economic player. But ASML's choices today may mark the turning point. The Netherlands was expected to obey Washington's playbook. Its reluctance shows that European nations may no longer be willing to sacrifice economic interests for American foreign policy. China knows this too. The ASML saga exposes cracks in the Western alliance, testing just how much economic strain Europe is willing to bear before charting its own course. If China can develop an alternative to ASML's technology within a decade, it would be a seismic shift. It wouldn't just challenge a company, it would challenge the entire Western technological edge. For now, the Netherlands may believe it is buying time and protecting national interests. But the world may remember this decision as the moment the West began losing its semiconductor monopoly. If you thought this was the final showdown, think again. This is only the beginning. The real question isn't just whether ASML can hold its ground, but whether the West can maintain its dominance in a world where economic interests increasingly trump old alliances.